I teach political science courses here on South Campus, and it is my mission this season to get you guys ready for the midterm elections, which are when?
In the midterm.
In the midterm. It's got some smart Alex there from Cornejo's class. Where? When are the midterm elections, folks? Just give me a month.
November 6th.
Yay! Yay! November 6th. All right, so we're going to be hosting a series of events here on South Campus, and I encourage you guys all to take a look. Your D2L shells, for those of you who don't take my class, look all around campus. It'll be publicized that we have a lot of events going on that will get you prepared to know the issues and know what you want to pursue as far as your elected officials. So today I am super honored to have Mr. John Hart, sir, here from, he is illustrious Broward County, I can't call you a statesman, but I could, a Broward County statesman maybe. He's very involved with Broward County politics. He's served as mayor, he's served as commissioner, and now he's working special projects for the county. I asked John to come to speak to you guys because of his vast experience in the political arena, and I wanted him to talk not so much about partisan issues, which he and I like to agree to disagree, but more about compromising in politics, okay, and about what that means, because I think that unfortunately for you guys in the current political atmosphere that we have, that is somewhat lacking. I'm pretty sure that's safe to say. We've talked about it in class, yeah. That the compromise just really isn't there. So I wanted him to come talk to you guys about how important that is, and I'll let him kind of take it from there with a little bit more detailed bio, and save your questions for when he asks, and then at the very end you guys can get a little snack. So thank you, Mr. Hart.
You should always clap in the beginning, because when somebody finishes, you don't have to clap. You can just leave. You know. I would like to just tell you a couple of quick things about myself. Not a lot, just a couple of quick things. I was the 3-term mayor in this community, not in Pembroke Pines, but in the City of North Lauderdale. I was on the county commission for 8 years, 2 terms on the county commission, and served in a variety of different things during that 20-year period of time. I helped build, not with my own hands, but I helped build the Sawgrass Expressway. That was part of the Broward County Expressway Authority that Bob Graham had appointed me to, and a variety of different things in between. So I've been involved with the political process, believe it or not, since before any of you were born. 1960 was my very first political involvement, and believe it or not, I actually had my first day in politics meeting Jack and Bobby Kennedy in Brooklyn on their last swing through the city before the election. And I'll tell you a little anecdote, because the anecdote I think will give you an understanding as to why I'm still involved with the political process in spite of what it is today. My mother was a seamstress in a sweatshop in Brooklyn, and she was not a citizen. She came from Newfoundland. I don't know if you know where Newfoundland is, but she came from Newfoundland, and my father came from Scotland. Neither one of them were citizens. But my mother, working as a seamstress in the sweatshop, for her to get a union card, which meant that if she ran a needle through her fingers, she could actually go to the doctor and get it taken care of, as opposed to before the union came in and organized. That was just time lost, and she couldn't get any compensation for it. But the obligation, it was all very, very democratic area of Brooklyn. Well, mostly all of Brooklyn was very democratic back then. So what her responsibility was to keep the union card was to do volunteer work for the elections, coincidental. And That volunteer work meant that she had to show up at a precinct and meet a woman by the name of Susan Delgado, and she was going to show her what she needed to do for the day. My mother said there's no way that I was going to be doing this. So she appointed me as her lackey. She said, you go and do it, okay? Do it for me. It's only going to be a couple of hours, and you know, it's not time wasted. You'll enjoy it. So I did. I looked for Susan Delgado. Well, that was about 9:30, 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I got home at about 9:30 Saturday night, and my mother was mortified. She said, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was going to take that long. And then I told her the story about, you know, this debate that broke out on 4th Avenue in Bay Ridge between this guy that was in a Winnebago, and he had like 10,000 Nixon stickers all around the Winnebago. And he got up on top of the Winnebago with a bullhorn, and he started to yell across the street into the A&P shopping center where I was. And he said, forget this guy, John Kennedy. He's not going to be elected. And forget this congressman you're trying to support. He's not going to get elected. This has been a Republican district for the last 60 years, and it's going to remain that way. And by the way, the next president is Richard Milhouse Nixon. And so, you know, we were just kids standing in the parking lot, handing out balloons and nonsense like that. And this train of cars pulled up into the shopping center. And we thought it was an Italian wedding because they were beating the horns, and that was a tradition back then. They would drive through the neighborhood and just, you know, for whatever reason, I don't know why, in triumph or say, this is my last gasp, I'm not really sure. And instead of it being an Italian wedding, it turned out to be the entourage of Jack Kennedy coming into the same exact A&P shopping center in Bay Ridge. And Bobby heard this guy across the street on top of the Winnebago, and he got furious. And he climbed up on the hood of a car, and he started to yell at this guy across the street. And he said, you don't know what you're talking about. The next president of the United States is my brother, and he's right here, and I'll show you that. And he started to argue with this guy. Well, it lasted about a minute. The guy on top of the Winnebago realized what was going on, shut his bullhorn off, got back into the Winnebago, and pulled away. And afterwards, I actually had the opportunity to have a piece of pizza and some soda with Bobby Kennedy and a couple of his handlers. Jack took off. He had a lot of other things to do. And so I got home at 9:30, and my mother said, I'm so sorry. I said, Mom, if this is what politics is all about, sign me up right now. This is pretty good, you know. And that was 1960, October of 1960. And what year is this now, 18? It's been a long time since I've been doing this. When Professor Hebert spoke to me, we talked about a few different things that might be of interest. I think that the idea of being able to compromise is something that is critically important for us to be able to get anything done. And compromise has become a four-letter word. You know, it's really not something that people want to accede to. People could have differences of opinions years ago, but they weren't enemies. They were people that had a different opinion. Today, if you don't agree with somebody and they're on the other side of an argument, that other side of the argument makes you the enemy. And it's not something where they're looking to try to find common ground. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're looking to try to find ways to further divide and further separate us by classifying us in different ways. And I'll share one story with you that I think is relative to what I'm trying to say. I don't want to get into the elections for this year. They're critically important. And not because of my particular political bent, although that has something to do with it. It's because these midterm elections are going to have a vast impact on where we go, not only in 2020, but where we go beyond 2020. So I want to give you a quick little story on how I got personally involved with elective office. I lived in the City of North Lauderdale. My wife and I were basically raising two families. She had two sons from her first marriage. I had two sons from my first marriage. And then we had a daughter together a few years later. So we had a kind of busy household. And juvenile crime was running twice the national average in this little town, nondescript town, North Lauderdale, 24,000 people, and how could 7.5% of the students or young people having to appear in juvenile court? How could that possibly be? And I looked into it, and I found out that the kids that were hanging out in front of the 7-Eleven that would accost you verbally or otherwise, trying to get into the store, they were not going to be joining the Little League or the football team or whatever. That wasn't in their interest. So I thought that there had to be something else that might attract them. And that something else, I said, hey, well, what kept me out of jail when I was a kid in Brooklyn? Basically, it was a boys' club in Flatbush that kept me out of jail. And I mean that literally, by the way. I was standing on the corner with a bunch of my friends. I happened to have a long-sleeve shirt on, and it was summertime. Back then, police had a lot more latitude than they do today. So since I had a long-sleeve shirt on, he came over to me, and he hit me on the back of my legs with his nightstick. He said, "Why do you have a long-sleeve shirt on?" I didn't have an answer. And he actually put me in his patrol car, which, you do that now, and he'd be sued, obviously. And he took me to the corner of Bedford Avenue and Snyder Avenue, and he took me out of the patrol car, and he said, "Okay, now look to your left." And I looked to my left, and it was the 67th precinct. Then he said, "Look to your right." And I looked to my right, and it was the Flatbush Boys Club. And even at 11 years old, I said to myself, okay, I think I know what he's going to ask. Which one do you want to go to now? The 67th precinct or the Boys Club? I nailed it. I want to go to the Boys Club. And it began an affiliation that I had with the Boys Club right then and there. And it really did save me from going down a bad path. I wasn't a punk or anything like that, but I was a little bit of a troublemaker. I grew up on the streets in Brooklyn. And so I thought about the Boys Club experience that I had as a kid. I said, we need a Boys Club in North Lauderdale. That will attract the kind of individuals that are not going to join the teams. Because you not only play pool and shoot baskets and stuff like that, you actually learn a lot of different things in those environments. I learned how to box, and I did for 3.5 years. I was taught how to box. I was taught how to not get angry when somebody hits you in the head. Get even, but don't get angry, to keep calm, that kind of thing. So I tried to see whether or not there was a Boys Club existing in Broward County that they could put a unit in North Lauderdale. And the answer was they did have a couple of units in Broward County, but then they had to do a demographic study to see whether or not it should be in North Lauderdale as opposed to Margate or Tamarack or Coral Springs or whatever. So they did this big study, it took them 6 months. And they came back and said, you're right. You've got a juvenile crime problem right here. So we think there should be a Boys Club unit. It wasn't Boys and Girls Clubs back then. It was still just Boys Clubs. It was a Girls Club of America, but they ultimately merged. Anyhow, he said, you're right. You've got a real serious problem here. So this is what you need to do for us. You need to get us a piece of property. You need to get us a building. You need to cut a deal with the city to get whatever they have in the form of property for $10 a year for the next 20 years. And then you can't have any money out of pocket. You can't go to our current donors. So you need to raise $75,000 before we can take on the responsibility of actually opening up a Boys Club in your city. So that was like, go away, kid. That was like, how am I going to do this? And at the end of the day, I started to co-opt some people in the city. And I got myself elected to the city council. And I started to then co-opt some of the people that were already on the city council. I said, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help? Talking about compromise now, okay? Can you help? And I had one guy that was a real pain in the neck. I was going to say something else. A pain in the neck. And he was always sneaky. He would never tell you up front what it was that he had in the back of his mind. But you knew it was something that was not going to be good. And so So I kind of avoided him. But the other 3 people that were on the council besides him, there were 5 people on the council, me being one of them, slowly but surely I got them to buy in. We need this deal with the city. Yeah, well, we don't have any money for a building. So I did something that I'm going to do to you that I really wouldn't say publicly too often. I certainly didn't say it publicly back then. I blackmailed somebody in the city, kind of. I don't know if you know what a plat is, but a plat is where you get your rights vested so you can build apartments or buildings or whatever the case may be. And there was a very large piece of property at the very western end of the city that the plat was running out. They were ready to lose their vested interest. They had already taken care of their park dedication requirements. And I went to the owner of this property. I said, geez, you know, it's a shame your plat is running out. And he said, well, you know, what am I going to do? I said, you know, I got this idea. What do you think about it? My idea is that we need about 1.25 acres on the corner of McNabb Road and 81st Avenue. Even though you've already given us your park dedication, I know that, that's okay. God, if you can find it in your business sense to give us that 1 extra 1.25 acres, you know, maybe I can do something to try to extend your vested rights. I'll get the council to see if they could say, okay, you got another 18 months, that kind of thing. And he really resisted. He knew that I was shaking him down, but he finally relinquished. And he said, okay, which one do you want? I said, that 1.25 acres right on the corner of 81st and McNabb Road. And he said, well, that's residential. What do you want that for? I said, that's what I think we need. So he said, okay, and he signed the agreement to dedicate it to the city. The ink wasn't dry by the time I had my council members change the designation from residential to commercial. And we did that literally within about a 3-week period of time, and we put the parcel out to bid, and the only bid that came in was from Gulf Oil. And Gulf Oil came in with a bid for $460,000. The little rec center that I had my eyes on for the Boys Club location was $320,000. So I went to my council colleagues. I said, here's the deal. We can go ahead and not put a dime out of our own taxpayers' pockets. We'll just transfer the value of what we just got from Gulf Oil, and we'll buy this piece of property where the rec center was, and we'll come out about $120,000 to the better. They said, go for it. And I did. So then I went back to the board of directors of the Boys Club, and I said, okay, I've got your building, I've got almost the money raised, not quite. I was short $10,000. I had raised $65,000, or we had raised $65,000 during the interim. It took, by the way, 2 years. This was not an overnight deal. So I came back to them, and I went to the board, and I said, well, we have the building, we've got an agreement with the city. The city is willing to support this for the next 20 years in whatever way they possibly can. And they said, fantastic. How much money did you raise? I said, well, I have $65,000. And somebody who was on the board of directors at the time, another pain in the you-know-what, he said, well, you're short. You know, you didn't come up with the full amount. And I said, I know. I've got a building, I've got the location, I've got everything else you wanted or you asked for. And this guy just was just a pain. And he said, yeah, but you came up short. The deal is a deal, period. Well, one of the members of the board of the Boys Club was this old man. His name was Walter Behagan. And Walter just slammed his hand on the table. And he said, are you serious? You're going to send this kid away because he came up short $10,000? Walter took out his checkbook and he wrote a check for $10,000 on the spot. He said, now he's got all the money. What are you going to say now? And so that's how the Boys Club of North Lauderdale became the Boys Club of North Lauderdale. And then it became the Boys and Girls Club because I said, this is ridiculous. You know, I mean, there's a thing called girls out there that have the same problems. So we need to do something about that. And it became the first of 5 units of Boys and Girls Clubs in Broward County that I had my hands on over a 20-year period of time. Juvenile crime went from where it was in the city, and they did the same demographic study 3 years later. It was down 46%. And the only thing new in the city was the club. So it proved that if you do something and you can get it done, even if you've got obstacles in the way, you might make an impact. It gets me back to this compromise thing. I didn't trust that guy I told you about earlier. I still don't trust him to this day. I think he's still alive, and he moved out of the area. But I went to the other gentlemen that were on the council. And like I said, slowly but surely I convinced them. I didn't have to blackmail them or twist their arms or anything like that. They were buying into this whole thing. They really thought it was a good idea. But a couple of them spoke against it at different times. I put the item for discussion on the agenda at the city council 19 times over a 2-year period of time, because I still wanted the heads to be bobbing up and down, yes, yes, yes. Give them small bites, you know. I didn't have to go for the whole thing all at once. And they kept saying yes. So every time I got a yes, I put another item on the agenda so they could say yes again. I didn't want to see any of the heads shaking back and forth, so I gave them easy ones to start off with. By the time the final vote came, the guy that I told you about earlier was a pain. He still was a pain. At the very end, he voted against it. But the other four, myself included, of course, voted for it. And the deal was done, and we opened up the Voice Club at the time. But the night that the item was finally approved, there was an old man by the name of Sam Miller, condo boss type of guy. We only had one major condo in the city at the time. And he wanted to sponsor the resolution because he said, I own this. I've been working on this thing for 2 years. I said, you're right, Sam. You should sponsor it. His name was on the sponsorship of the resolution for the city to agree to open up the Boys Club. Not mine. It was his. And he got this other fellow, Carl Fester, to say, would you co-sponsor this with me? And I said, Carl, do it. You know, I mean, if you believe in it, do it. And Carl put his name on it as well. The only name that didn't appear on the resolution to open up the Boys Club was mine. But it was cool, because I got what I wanted to try to do for the young people in the city. It didn't matter to me who got the credit for it. I mean, everybody knew that it was a collective effort to try to get this thing done. You don't get something like this accomplished by yourself. You just don't. And it's a lesson in life, I think, but it's also true. And so let's fast forward to today, if you don't mind. I'm showing my political stripes, Professor, and please don't get mad at me, okay? I'll be calm, and I'll be somewhat neutral.
I'll come.
Okay. Otherwise, you can shut off my mic. A couple of days ago, I had the opportunity, because I was working from my home, to listen to pretty much the entire presentation of President Obama to a bunch of students. I think the University of Indiana, if I'm not mistaken.
Illinois.
Huh?
Illinois.
Illinois, close enough. They started with an I. And so I listened to it, and it was really the first time that he had come out and made a very strong political speech since he left office. And he talked about this midterm election as being so critically important. Clearly he had an agenda, and clearly he has an agenda. But his agenda was not so much partisan as much as it was the only way you have any change that ever takes place is if you participate in the system. You standing on the sidelines and complaining about something because you don't like what's going on doesn't get anything done. It just doesn't. And the only way that you're going to be able to accomplish something is if you get involved. And key, you vote. You actually vote. That's the way you do it. That's our system. And thank God we have it. Think about it. Not everybody has the same kind of opportunity to cast their opinion and to try to make change. But we do. And we sometimes fail to take advantage of it, especially during midterm elections, where the turnout is so pathetically low. It's almost shameful. So he talked about turning out the vote. And he and the former First Lady, they've got something going on. I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's when we vote, or when we all vote, or all get together and go out and vote, you can change the world, or something like that. And I want to mention something to you with regards to getting back to the compromise and getting back to voting. I served in public office for almost 20 years. I told you the Boys Club story, so I'm not going to bore you with repeating that. But what I found was that anything that I ever wanted to try to get accomplished, I needed somebody else to be singing on that same song, that same sheet of music. That was silly. And at one point in time, and Professor, you may not know this, in fact, you probably don't know this, I was always very analytical in my political approach to things. If it didn't make monetary sense, if it didn't seem like it had a social cause to it, then why bother? You can play around on the margins all the time for all you want, but you're not making a difference. And at one point in time, and I do want to share this story with you because it's meaningful to me. This was in the late 1980s, I guess, maybe late 80s, early 90s. And the atmosphere in the criminal justice system, it's funny how these things keep repeating themselves, but the atmosphere in the criminal justice system back then was lock them up and throw away the key. No second chances, no third chances, just lock them up. And we were very good at locking them up. You know, our jails and prisons were just burgeoning, you know, with people. They've gotten worse, by the way, in the last decade or so because many of them are run privately now, and it's their incentive to keep people in jail, not to get them out. But I looked around and I said, well, you know, how much is this thing going to cost us on an average basis? And you don't have to take notes on this because I know you'll remember every word I've said. So I'm teasing you about that, and you probably won't. The Socian over here is going to remember everything that I've said. I love that name, by the way. I hope you don't mind me. I'm not picking on you. It's just a pretty name. And I did some homework, and I found out that people that went to prison, or to jail, but to prison, for non-violent drug offenses actually recycle themselves back in prison every 2 years, 2 to 2.5 years. Because the recidivism rate was 85%. The repeating of that same basic problem was 85%. And again, the qualification, no violence, no firearms, no nothing like that, just buying or selling drugs, period. And I said, well, how much does this cost? And it costs, believe it or not, $78,000 per person per year to be able to do this. By the time the police made their arrest, they filed the complaints, they took them to court, they got the adjudication, all of that stuff. It was $78,000. I said, wow, that's a lot of money. And then they're going to go back and do it again every 2 years or so. What's wrong with this picture? Nothing's happening, nothing's changing. And I found out that there was this experiment underway in Dade County, Miami-Dade County. First one in the nation. It was called drug court. And drug court was this very, very interesting concept that you didn't lock them up and throw away the key, but you gave them the stick and the carrot for somebody that was arrested for a non-violent drug offense. And the stick was, if you test dirty when you go through the court, then you're going to get the maximum sentence that you could possibly be given for the first time that you were arrested. The maximum. On the other hand, if you didn't, and you made it through a full year of drug court, we expunged your record. You wouldn't have a felony on your record. So you could go to school, you could get a job, you know, you could be a contributor to your community, you could keep your family together maybe. And I said, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And this really is getting into the compromise. I promise you I'm not digressing on this at all. So I'd like you to think about this for a moment, especially all of you really hip people in the political science class that, and the political club, I should say, that the professor is so engaged in. You had a court system, Broward County court system, tapped out. They didn't have any money. They didn't want to add anything to their budget. They didn't have a judge waiting in the wings to become the first drug court judge. So I had to convince the county judge administrator, the court administrator, that this is probably a good idea. How much is this going to cost us if we do drug court as opposed to recycling these people every 2.5 years? So it was $35,000. So, oh, now that sounds to me like a pretty good deal. 76 to keep recycling and nothing gets done, 35,000 to possibly rehabilitate them, and then you change somebody's life and you change the community at large. I said, this I like. This makes good business sense. So I convinced the court administrator, if I get the money from the county commission, because I was on the commission at the time, if I get the money from the county commission, would you go ahead and create an administrative judge for the drug court? And he agreed to do that. But then I had to go to the sheriff. And there was a sheriff in this county. His name was Nick Navarro. He passed away some years ago. A very colorful guy. The first show Cops or whatever that was back way back then. He was in it. I mean, he went in for drug busts and things like that. He was a character. And he had this fiery Latin temper, which was really, it was just fun to watch. I mean, he was a show. So I had to convince him in this lock 'em up and throw away the key environment that, hey, we're going to do something different. We're going to take these people and give them a year worth of basically rehabilitative opportunity, and they'll have to do it themselves. But we're not going to lock them up and throw away the key. We're going to give them a chance to see if they can get themselves straightened out in that year's period of time. Convincing Nick to do this was not an easy gig, as you might imagine. He was a lock them up and throw away the key type of guy. And I said, just be patient with me, okay? And then I had to go to the state attorney. The state attorney wanted nothing to do with this. It sounded soft on crime. I want to lock them up and throw away the key for sure. And if the sheriff arrests them, I'm putting them in prison. I mean, that's what I was dealing with, that whole mentality. And I said to the state attorney at that time, he still is a state attorney now that I think about it. His name was Mike Satz. And I said to Mike, Mike, before you go ahead and go hard against this idea, let me see if I can put the other pieces together. And we'll give you a complete deal at the end of the day. And if it's a complete deal, then you can decide whether or not you'll support it or not. And he said, okay, I'll wait. So good. So now I had the sheriff, kind of. I had the state attorney, kind of. I did have the judge from the drug court, for a drug court. I had to convince my county commissioners, my fellow colleagues on the county commission, to come up with $300,000 to set up a brand new court at the circuit court, judicial circuit courts. That was a little bit of a tough sell because my colleagues were my colleagues. They didn't necessarily see things the way I did, and thank goodness. But I convinced them finally. And the last one that I had to convince was the public defender. So now you have a public defender who wants everybody out of jail. Nobody's ever guilty of anything as far as the public defender is concerned. You can be caught red-handed with drugs all over the place. You're fine, you just go home. That's the public defender's job, to basically do that. So I had the public defender on one side, the state attorney on the other side, Crazy Nick in the middle of all of this stuff. And then I needed, of course, money from the county to go ahead and launch this baby. And it finally came together after about a 7 or 8 month period of time, back and forth, back and forth. There's a little restaurant at the Riverside Hotel on Los Olas Boulevard. And I probably was having 2 or 3 breakfasts a morning at different times, because I couldn't speak to Mike Satz at the same time I was speaking to the public defender. I couldn't speak with Nick Navarro for any circumstances whatsoever. So I had to have them all scheduled at different times. But I was there every day just about for 6 months until we finally pulled this baby together and we put it on the agenda, and it was unanimously approved by the county commission to start this thing. It became the second drug court in the United States. There's 2,200 drug courts in the United States now. And what I think about all the time is that the compromises that I had to make. I was doing the shuttle diplomacy at the Riverside Hotel. But what I had to do is, I would say to Nick at one point in time, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, we shouldn't let these people off. You know, we shouldn't give them rehabilitative options. Don't let them to jail, but let them figure it out. And Nick would say, you know, that's what I like to hear. I said, well, you know, Nick, it's costing the county $78,000 a person. That could be in your budget if you used it wisely. He liked that.
There you go.
He liked that a lot. I said, you know, it's about $40,000 to your benefit for each one that we don't throw in jail and keep in there. And he liked that a lot. I had the hardest time in the final analysis with the state attorney. The state attorney wanted nothing at all to do with this because it sounded like you were being soft on crime at a time when everybody else was on the opposite side of that argument. And I had to convince him that this is not being soft on crime. This is a good investment. You're not only possibly going to turn around people's lives, but you just may end up making a whole bunch of money on behalf of the taxpayers of our county. So here's the end of it. We got going, obviously. It then became a national model, and then it became a model for a thing called the Veterans Court, and then the Mental Health Court. It's the same model, basically. And, I guess about 8-9 years ago, something like that, maybe a little bit longer, was the 20th anniversary of drug court in Broward County. And Florida State University, if anybody here is a Gator, I'm sorry, but Florida State University did an independent financial analysis of what was being saved by the taxpayers in Broward County as a result of drug court. It was $96 million over that period of time. $96 million. And there had been 10,000 successful people that had come through drug court at that point in time. I don't know what it is now, but 10,000 people that didn't have a felony, they didn't repeat. The recidivism rate, by the way, you know, that repeat rate, it went from 85% to 15%. Wow. It literally reversed itself. And it's probably gone up some, you know, because I'm giving you what I know to be the statistics at the time. You know, I haven't tracked it, you know, ever since. But all I know is that even if it was 30%, or even if it was 28% or 40%, it wasn't 85%. And those are the numbers that kept resonating with me. So the compromise part, to bring it back home, was I didn't lie. I stretched the truth sometimes when I was speaking with different elements of this little get-together. But I told Mike Satz, you know, Mike, you know, you're just a tough son of a gun. You've got a great conviction. Let's keep it rolling, you know. And I would say that to Mike. And then he had a deputy, and his name was Ralph Ray. And I would say to Ralph at a separate point in time, I said, you know, Ralph, you know, you might be looking this gift horse in the mouth. You know, this has got a good thing going over here. If you can get Mike to back down from his stance a little bit, and we get this thing going, hey, if it fails in a year's period of time, what do you have to lose? You know, nothing. And he got Mike to back down a little bit. And he got, and he helped me actually, ultimately with the sheriff, convincing the sheriff that, you know, what you're doing right now seems like it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. And statistics all over the place about how to justify why it didn't make any sense. So we finally got it going, and as I said, you know, in its 20th anniversary, we saved $96 million of taxpayer money for the county. We had a recidivism rate that was just about reversed, which thank God for that, because these people didn't have a felony on their record, and they could do what I just said earlier. They could go to school, they could get a job, et cetera, et cetera. And it proved to me, just like the example of getting the Boys Club started in North Lauderdale, I couldn't have gotten that to become a Boys and Girls Club without compromise, without people on the board of directors. I got elected to the board of directors of Boys and Girls Clubs way back in before you were born. A long time ago. And before there was an ocean, I got elected to the board of directors. But every step along the way, there was always somebody that would stick their hand up in the air and say, this is not a good idea. And you had to be able to communicate with that person, not just shut them down or shut them off. You had to try to figure out, is there a way for me to get through to you? Is there anything that I can say or do that would help you get to a place where you might change your mind? And you didn't always have success. You know, if I told you that I had nothing but a sterling record of success, I'd be lying to you. I had plenty of the ones that I went to the wall for and didn't have success. But the ones that I did have good success for or with, were things that were not on the margins. It wasn't like, oh, why don't we change our phone system to X, Y, Z? You know, they didn't have iPhones and stuff like that back then. They still had the ones that you crank, you know. Operator, can you? But the ones that we did have a major impact on changed people's lives, changed our community's lives. And actually what I'm doing for Broward County right now on this special project I've been asked to do, it's a similar story, not quite the same. But by the time I got elected to the county commission, I had already been involved with elective office for years. And the Florida League of Cities, the Broward County League of Cities, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, one meeting after another. Every month they've got to do something to get you together. And I was tired. I just said, I don't want to go to another. It's like iced tea. I can't drink iced tea anymore because I was filled up to here with iced tea about 20 years or so ago. But I never wanted to go to another meeting. Never. A conference in Washington in March? Are you nuts? There's no way that I want to do that. Well, I went to my first National Association of Counties meeting in Washington, D.C. in March of 1989. And there was a side panel of people discussing an idea. And the side panel wasn't a government or elected official panel. It was a private sector panel. And Fairfax County, Virginia, a very progressive and affluent area in Virginia. The business community came together there at the time, and they said, you know what? We're missing a whole generation of opportunity here because young people that are coming out of high school, not in the top 5%, because they're like going to be able to take care of themselves. They'll go to college, they'll get a scholarship, they'll be fine. But the 10% and 15% levels that have gone to school every day, their high school career, or just about every day, that showed that ability to be responsible, show up, you know, that kind of thing. We're missing out on offering them an opportunity. So they decided that the top businesses within the community, the insurance companies and the banks and the like, they would set one slot aside for a graduating student from the high schools there and give that person full year's salary to be an entry-level person in that business. Benefits, 2 weeks vacation or whatever the vacation was at the time. And the condition is that each of the people that would take on one of these young people coming out of high school had to also assign a mentor in that respective business so that they weren't parachuted in. And like, now what do I do? You know, that kind of thing. And they weren't to do make work, not shuffling papers around, nonsense like that. They had to learn what that job was all about. And they experimented with it. It turned out to be a booming success in Fairfax County, Virginia. Oh, I was whole hot and tail. I came back and I went to the Port Everglades Association, which is a group of businesses that operate in and around the port. And I pitched them my idea over a luncheon. Thanks, but no thanks. We're not interested. And I said, wow, that was pretty much cold water being thrown on me. So then I went to the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. I said, they got to buy into this thing. It's such a good idea. So I pitched it to them. Thanks, not interested. And I said, my goodness gracious, this is a great idea that, you know, people have already shown it can be successful. And you're giving these young people a chance to actually grow within their own business that they might like, they might want to stay with. And so then I went back to Broward County, and the human resources director, good guy. He's a good guy because he helped me. Otherwise he wouldn't be such a good guy. I sat down with him and I said, Phil, this is what I'm trying to do. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, make it work for the county. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, if it works for private business, why couldn't it work for county government? And he said, well, it could be interesting. And this guy was, by the way, and I have to just say this, his name is Phil Rosenberg, and he's retired now. Almost everybody I know is retired now. But he is a fascinating character. PhD type of guy, all of that kind of stuff. He was actually a member of MI6 at one point in time, the British version of our CIA, I guess, whatever. So a fascinating individual. And he said, well, I think we can make this thing work. And so we started something that we called initially the Public Service Intern Program. And it was like a misnomer to a certain degree because they weren't really interns. They were full-time employees with benefits and the like. They had to have a mentor, and they were not shuffling papers around. They would be in aviation, they'd be in the port, they'd be in engineering, they'd be in all sorts of, there's 60 agencies in Broward County. And by the way, for what it may be worth, this is not a commercial for Broward County or for government, but there's 6,300 employees for Broward County alone. And that doesn't include any of the cities or the hospital districts or anything, just Broward County. There's 6,300 employees. And so the career paths are phenomenal. And it sounds like a commercial for Broward County, it's not. But the opportunity is tremendous. So we did the public service intern program. I convinced my colleagues that it was a worthwhile investment. The 25th anniversary of the public service intern program would have taken place, but they ran out of money during the recession, and I had to stop the program about 7 or 8 years ago. I've been now asked by the county administrator to start it up again and see if we can get this thing going again. And I've agreed to do that. That's what I'm doing with the county right now. But the 25 thing that I wanted to say, Professor, which makes me feel really, really proud. The very first public service intern that came through the program, way back, whenever that was, is a woman by the name of Selena Salcedo. And Selena has stayed in touch with me on and off over the years. Selena is now the Chief Administrative Officer of the airport. Think about that.
Wow.
So I've said to the county administrator, I said, she's the cream of the crop. I mean, you don't get everybody to be a Selena Salcedo. But then I found out from doing a little bit of homework and twisting some arms in human resources to see how many of these people that went through the program are still with the county. There's 48 of them are still with the county that started years and years ago. And of course, they didn't start recently because the program ended in 2008 or 9 during the recession. So these are people that have been with the county, some of them as many as 20, 25 years. And they were given a chance to just see what government could be all about. It's a public service, yes. Nothing wrong with that. I like public service. But what I found in doing some of the homework, and then again, trying to convince some of the people that are there today that this is not being another burden being put on your shoulders. This is a good thing, I promise you. Trust me. Every politician says that at one point in time. So you just have to excuse that. It's just, it's habitual. Like, you just can't, it's like in your DNA. You can't stop it from coming out. So we're going to try to start it up all over again. And the same thing holds true. You had to go to high school, virtually almost all of the days of your high school career. Generally speaking, you had to have something to do afterwards, like taking care of a family member or having a job or something like that. You had to have a mentor. That still exists. All of that still exists. But if they can actually make it through this program in that first year, here was the deal that we cut with them. They could either continue to work in that position or be hired by another division of Broward County so that they weren't just chopped off at the knees after that first year. They had a pathway. P.S. Selena had no intention of going to college. She ended up getting both her undergraduate's and graduate degree from FIU, and then chaired the alumni committee after that. So I wanted to share those things with you because it does come back full circle to this thing called compromise. None of these things could occur without me trying to make some allowances for people that didn't have the same idea. That's called compromise. You create friendships when you compromise. You don't necessarily create enemies. And the more that you can extend that family of yours, the more you can get done. Regardless of what it is, it doesn't have to be in government, I mean, regardless. So I'm here today to basically, Professor, to say to all these fine young people, I hate you because you're so young. That's the first thing I say. But the second thing I really want to say is that just take this in mind, that you need to show up, you need to vote, and this is a commercial. You need to vote. The first contest that I was actually working in when I met John and Bobby Kennedy was for a guy by the name of Hugh Carey. He was running for Congress in Bay Ridge at the time. He had a gazillion kids. He had probably as many kids as young people as in this room. And I became an extension of the Carey family this one day. He won by 4 votes in this former Republican district in Bay Ridge. 4 votes. So, as Mr. Obama would tell you, that he won certain states by less than 1 vote per precinct in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, and the like. I mean, your vote really does count. And you do know, of course, just from looking around, that elections have benefits and they have liabilities, but they certainly have consequences. And you are the only one that can make those consequences work in your favor. Nobody else can. It's you. So compromise, be patient, vote, please. If you're not registered already and you're eligible, please register to vote. You still have time. And make sure that these midterms are about as important to you as they really are for the rest of the country.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'd like to, first of all, thank Mr. Hart.
Thank you.
A little bit of Broward College swag in there. Yes. I know what swag is. Okay. It's hard to. It's just a habit. I would like to, since it is 9/11, I would like to just take a minute and just have some silence to remember the tragic event that happened 17 years ago on this day. It really has shaped our country and a lot of the political issues that have come out of that event. So if we could just take a minute. Okay, thank you guys. You guys have been a wonderful audience.
Sure.
Mr. Hart is going to hang around. If you have any questions you'd like to ask him, you can also help yourself to a little bit of food in the back. And please, my students, check D2L. Always check that D2L, know what's happening, and I'll see you guys Thursday.
Oh, food. Good to see you.
So what was your first thought? Yeah, was was great. It was great hearing your story.
You bet.
It wasn't indeed a pleasure sharing this with you.
Pardon?
It was indeed a pleasure to partake of this caucus. Thank you, sir.
What's your name?
You bet.
Thank you. I love this speech. Dr. Wade did a great job. You're a fantastic storyteller, and I will forever walk away with make the consequences work in your favor.
What's your name?
Nina Robinson.
Nina Robinson?
Yes.
Pleasure meeting you, Nina.